Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I am so excited because today I have a return guest to the show. His name is Scott Forrester, and he is a movement expert, mind-body specialist, licensed physical therapy assistant, personal trainer, and Feldenkrais practitioner. He is also the host of the podcast, The Aware Athlete Show, and author of the book titled The Aware Athlete: How the Wild Origins of Our Human Nature and the New Science of Neuroplasticity are Redefining Fitness. As I said, Scott has been on the show before, so I would love it if you would check out his previous episode, which is episode number 163, and that is titled Awareness, Potential, and Human Dignity. So Scott, thank you so much for coming back and welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy. I'm always happy to talk to you because we have fantastic conversations. And just to clarify for the listeners, we are colleagues basically because we do have similar backgrounds with the Feldenkrais work as well as the physical therapy work. You are also a personal trainer, but all of that just kind of comes together and gives you a different perspective on pretty much everything that you do.
The Feldenkrais method, especially, for sure. Yeah.
It is a magical method, and I mean that sounds very mystical. But if you want to give just a really quick rundown about Feldenkrais and what it has meant to you and how it has impacted your life in so many ways, because you're a fairly new practitioner, right? You graduated in 2014. Yes. And so what drew you to Feldenkrais in the first place?
Well, like a lot of people, it was an injury.
Yeah.
So obviously that's one of the things that's meant a lot to me is that at the time I was beginning to explore the method. I was doing so because I had a problem with my knee that was keeping me from running as much as I wanted to. Now it is so much later in my life, but I can still do what I want to, even though I'm much older. So that was primarily initially what it meant to me. Eventually it meant much more because it meant a way to understand life better. And by that, I mean that our society is a society where people live in their heads a lot. You go to school and you sit in the chair and be quiet and just, learn. You memorize information, you learn your math and so on. And then that's kind of where you live in life. So I recently interviewed somebody who in one of his books or one of his articles I saw somewhere, he was asking a question. It was a questionnaire, and one of the questions was something to do with, do you value spiritual health more than physical health or physical fitness? Do you value physical fitness more than spiritual fitness, or do you value them equally? I mean, that is a terrible paraphrase of this question. It was a much better question. But I'm tempted to say that I would value spiritual health more. But you see, Feldenkrais brings you into some kind of a balance because we live in a physical life. And to understand it, you have to understand that we live in our bodies. As well as our minds. So that's the reason that Feldenkrais really made life make sense for me beyond just overcoming injuries, which is very important also.
So. One of the things that really resonated with me, and I found it hard to really wrap my head around at first when I first discovered the method and started doing it and then entered a training. Was one of the principles or one of the basic premises is to make yourself comfortable.
Yes.
And I thought, well, why would I want to do that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Type A personalities don't want to do that.
Well, no. And everything I had done in my life up until that point was very uncomfortable and like, pushing yourself to extremes. Yeah. Not only physically, but, scholastically, career wise, everything was just push, push, push. And
So
when I
that's where
heard
I'd like to get into semantics a little. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, and when I first heard that, lie down on your back and make yourself comfortable, I thought, well, number one, I can't be comfortable lying on the floor on my back because it is a hard floor, even though I was on a mat. And number two, it's like, what does this mean to make yourself comfortable? I honestly did not know what the meaning was.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, pushing. So in the Feldenkrais method, you might talk about a lot of things. And I, with runners say, pushing yourself to the next level. Well, how about the word endurance? I think that's a very valuable word. Patience, skill, challenging yourself. I think that's very valuable because that's what life does, whether you want to or not. And challenge, getting out of your comfort zone. Sometimes they talk about that in Feldenkrais. In fact, that's one of the foundational aspects where change, change this and change that, because that might give you an opportunity to see some of your habits.
Mm-hmm.
So we can, I think semantically, even push yourself is all right if you understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But pushing through the pain and so on, that may say that you're ignoring the pain. Mm-hmm. And if you're ignoring something, you don't learn from it. Mm-hmm. And make yourself comfortable. What does that mean? Well, you're a dancer. Uh-huh. Yeah. So you don't want to do something ugly. You want to do something elegant. Mm-hmm. It's another foundation of the Feldenkrais method, which people in patients in physical therapy have laughed at me when I said, making the impossible possible, the possible easy, and the easy elegant. Well, why would you want to do that? Okay, so really, if you look at it from both sides semantically, there's nothing wrong with pushing yourself. So what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with being stuck in that mentality in a rigid way is that you don't get what you want. Mm-hmm. Pushing yourself through an injury is not the way to get better. It's learning what you might have done. We can't do away with everything, but we can almost always make it worse.
That is very, very true.
Yeah. So what am I doing that might make it worse? And that question then leads to what am I doing that might improve it? If you can make it worse, you can improve it too. Mm-hmm. So you think of physical labor. I was a framer for a number of years, but I didn't do a lot of concrete work. Now I've done a little, and I have another thing coming up. And what I'm learning is concrete is not brute force either. Not at all.
Interesting.
It's all timing, understanding the medium, and understanding the process, understanding the order you do it in. And what your outcome you're looking for, understanding your tools, and then actually having a light enough touch to know how to trowel the concrete. You don't get in there and grind on the concrete when it's not ready for that. You dig holes in it, even if you don't have a little finesse in your touch, even if you don't have a little bit of experience. Nothing is accomplished by brute force, and even the things that are accomplished by brute force are accomplished because you know how and when to use the brute force. Mm-hmm. So why should we make ourselves comfortable? Why should we learn? It's because you don't get what you want if you don't use the human capacity to learn. And that starts with make yourself comfortable.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I just loved everything that you said for many reasons. And I especially loved the description about the concrete and, I can't remember the word that you used, like smoothing it out or whatever, because my father was a builder.
Yeah.
And built two beautiful stone houses. The one we lived in for a very short time. And then the second one, the family was getting bigger. And so they just sold that house and he built another one. And for somebody to say, oh, I'll just build you another one when you're talking about a house, to me is just blows me away. But all my entire life, I watched him build fireplaces. Almost everybody in our hometown had a fireplace built by my husband or by my father. And I even have one in my own home here in Denver that my dad built for me. And watching him with the stone and the cement and how he would choose each stone, and he would even carve it or shape it in such a way, it was a work of art. It was a thing of beauty just to watch, because you would think it would be nothing but muscle, but there was so much finesse that went into the work. It was truly like watching a ballet.
Absolutely. Mark Allen, I got a chance to talk to him not long ago, 6-time world Ironman champion, and he has a book called The Art of Competition, in which he has very succinct phrases that he's developed that described different phases of his journey to win all those Ironmans.
Wow.
And the photographs are beautiful photographs of nature, and then he'll take you on a little 1 or 2 sentence journey on the building blocks of his successes. The art of competition. Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to write that down. And I use that word a lot, like the art of movement, the art of healing through movement, the art of conversation. I mean, because everything can really be an art form rather than just putting our heads down and plowing through it. It's kind of like an uncomfortable way to go through life.
Yeah, you're not a full human being in the full sense of the word if you don't explore your possibility of learning various things that you are meant to be involved in.
And the other thing you said that I thought was really interesting, because we were talking about making ourselves comfortable, and then right in the next sentence, you kind of segued, but we also need to get out of our comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And that is really truly where a lot of learning, personal growth occurs, is when we do take ourselves out of our comfort zone and try things that might be intimidating or scary or overwhelming at first. But I think that we get that ability to do that by learning how to first make ourselves comfortable in a safe situation. And then we get like the confidence to be able to go out of that comfort zone.
Absolutely. I don't know if there's a book by Robert Spencer. I think that's his name, Feldenkrais practitioner. And he's written a book on how carefully you have to step out of your comfort zone.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. I don't have the title in mind right off the bat, but absolutely true. And that's one of the beauties of the Feldenkrais method, is because you're using your own experience on the floor, not comparing yourself usually to someone else. Might gather some tips from someone else. But so you're in a safe zone because we don't really know what our own habits are for sure. And certainly we defend ourselves mightily. Ability is a tough thing to come by.
Yeah.
And so it's the ability to freely explore yourself and your own movement without someone coming up to you like they do in certain yoga classes and correcting your posture. That's not it, correcting you, move your pelvis up or whatever. And because the most important idea is that you're opening yourself up to explore your own ways of doing things. And that's just, I do not know any other situation I've been in where I had the full freedom to do that without worrying about what someone else thinks, or even whether I am doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That for me was incredibly liberating, because everything that I had done up until that point in my life, either right or wrong, good or bad, better or worse, there was so much judgment on everything. And, especially in a ballet class, and I started as an adult, I was 20 when I started dancing, but even to have the teacher come over and try and crank on your arm or your leg, or to do this,
Yes.
do that. And it's like, you can't even feel what's going on. You're just trying to imitate what you think the movement is supposed to look like. And you're trying to do something that you think you should do instead of exploring for yourself what you could do. And when I started taking Feldenkrais lessons and classes, I could feel things changing. I couldn't express it and I wasn't sure what was going on. But once I started the training, I mean, it was just in a matter of a few short months, my dancing was completely different.
Yeah, for sure. Now, a lot of people will say, I'm not coordinated, or I never look coordinated, so that the word coordinated becomes an intimidating word. And really, if you could view it in a different way, coordinated just means I feel better when I do it, or I can do it in a way that I feel like I'm doing it better.
Mm-hmm.
That's all
Mm-hmm.
it means.
Mm-hmm.
In its purest sense, I think, or in its foundational sense.
And that goes back to making things easier. And then there was another thing that you said about like pushing through things, that you just can't get what you want that way. And there's another Feldenkrais saying that I absolutely love. And that is, when you know what you're doing, you can do what you want.
Yeah, you have to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's why when I look at a project, sometimes I learn all about it cognitively. And there's two forms of learning, because you do have to learn things cognitively and understand the rules, but then you have to experience it. So you learn it all cognitively. And then if you're honest, you say, and this will get you in good stead to start on a project, is to say, I understand all the steps, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you also recently in this conversation used the word freedom.
Did I use it already?
Yes, you did. I'm paying attention. I'm following along pretty well. Yeah, freedom. And I thought I wasn't sure if that was intentional, that you snuck that word in there, or it seems to be something that is capturing your attention these days.
Yeah, sometimes when I look at the news, there's all kinds of things happening in the world, and I see people obsessed with the term freedom, or with whether they have freedom or not, or with it, whether anybody can tell them what to do, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember the line, if I can come up with it. I was 10 years old when I saw the movie The Alamo. And at 10 years old, I thought, what a great movie.
Uh-huh.
Now I look back at it and I see John Wayne talking about freedom, and he says that he's talking about the word republic, but he says the freedom to buy or sell, come or go, be drunk or sober, just as you please. That was his definition of freedom.
Uh-huh.
I can be a drunk if I want to,
Uh-huh.
which actually characterized him.
Uh-huh.
And if you know about his private life, he was a drunk.
Right. Well, well, that's funny you should even say that, the drunk or sober, because in my training, my trainer, Dennis Leary, would say, can you be drunk and sober at the same time?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy. And I kind of obsessed about that for a while, like, and I think what he was trying to get at were the opposite, extremes. But can you fully go through that spectrum,
Right.
rather than being one or the other?
Yeah. Can you be very, very angry and calm at the same time?
And yes, you can.
Well, yeah, you can, depending on what you mean by very angry.
Okay. Yeah. I was referring to controlled rage.
And can you be very, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be very, very tense and very relaxed at the same time? Maybe. It depends on what you're talking about.
Right.
But
excellent point.
Yeah. But you can't be in two states at the same time, generally.
Right.
Yeah. So the idea that I can do whatever I want, I'm not going to take that out into the outer realm anymore. Is so different from he who would be the greatest of all, let him be the servant of all. And it is simply not designed for us to be able to do whatever we want at any time without restraint. That's not living, I don't think. And so then Feldenkrais talks about freedom, and he's talking about the inner kind. And Viktor Frankl talks about freedom, and he's talking about the same thing. And Mark Allen talks about freedom or power, and he's talking about something very similar. And awareness, I think Feldenkrais said, is it exists in that gap between thinking and acting. If you think and immediately act, that's compulsion, that's habit. If you think but have the time to inhibit and then act, that's freedom.
Well, in that case, maybe that's what the world needs right now, is a little bit more Feldenkrais.
I think so, for sure.
Yeah.
He thought so.
Yeah. I totally believe that. And I like what you're talking about with this concept of freedom and, the freedom to think before you act. And instead of talking about freedom, like the comment I just made on a global sense, to have that personal freedom, a freedom of choice in how you decide to go through life, how you decide to move, the choices that you make, starting at that very, with yourself, to practice that freedom is very, very liberating.
Yeah. Now, Mark Allen said, if you go through an event and your outcome when you finish was just based on a metric on time, then you just competed. You didn't learn anything. If it was all about how fast you did something or the outcome in your placing, then all you did was compete. You didn't learn anything. But if you learn the lessons that you can learn from competing, then you're doing it for the right reason. I'm over 70 years old, and last winter I went up on some slopes when it was icy. In hard ice, you can actually balance, like if you had to run across a skating rink, you can do that. But on a slope, you can't.
No.
If you have hard ice on the slope, the very best you could do is kind of ski down it. But on hard ice, you can't ski either, and your feet will be out from you. Anyway, I almost broke my wrist twice.
Oh my God.
This winter, I stayed off the slopes.
Yeah.
I mean, I can get on slopes. If it's completely icy, I can put on my micro spikes. But if it's in between and I don't wear them, and I think I can step around something and I don't see what's under it, then you don't want to be on a slope.
So were you walking or hiking, or were you skiing?
I was kind of jogging up the trail or walking when I thought it was dangerous. And so this winter, I would come to a dangerous situation and I had to walk kind of in that path, but I would continually find myself saying, you've got choices, and you stop and you move way off in an inconvenient direction and you don't get hurt. So many situations, and in different situations, but even in relating to people, I'll find myself sometimes stopping and saying, you have a choice. You don't have to do it the same way every time. So Feldenkrais talked about being free from our inner cross motivations and conflicts. And that's okay. So even in your book, I noted that some people who are high level martial artists still don't act like they're in control of themselves.
Correct.
Even though that is a real foundation of the method. Martial arts. Oh.
It's interesting because in my journey through the martial arts, as well as even in the journey, through my Feldenkrais training. And of course, the martial arts is you're always in control of yourself, or at least that's kind of the premise. And in Feldenkrais, of course, you've got this freedom and the choices, and you don't have to go into like old patterns and habits. And there were two instances that were like boom, boom, right after each other, all on the same day. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but it was something with my sensei. And I did a private with him, and then I was driving over to my Feldenkrais training. And I thought, as I left the dojo, I thought, wow, after 20 years of martial arts, you would think he would have more control over himself than that. And it's like, what would he have been like before without it? And then the same thing, something really bizarre happened with one of my trainers, and thinking that, okay, now you're promoting the Feldenkrais method as being a way of having more freedom in your life and more control and more choices. And yet you're going into this pattern. What would you be like without this training?
Yeah, because we're not perfect.
No, of course not.
Feldenkrais was questioned by his students, and he said, of course, I'm not aware all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it gives you such a way to relate to life and to improve it.
Mm-hmm. It gives you options to look at things in a different way, and just kind of like flipping the script. For example, I have a friend who loves spreadsheets. And in promoting my book and stuff, she helps me promote. And she wants me to do this spreadsheet and do it this way. And it's like, I cannot. A spreadsheet makes me go crazy. I just can't do it. I can write longhand. I can put it on a Word document. I just can't do a spreadsheet, and I'm not going to do it. And she keeps insisting this is the way to do it. And she had a list of like websites and contacts and things that she says, this will really help you promote your book. And I'm looking at this, and I just got so overwhelmed. And I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. And all of a sudden, it didn't seem nearly as overwhelming. I chucked her spreadsheet, as lovely as it was, and, kind of deleted it. I wasn't going to pay any attention. I just looked at the list, and I worked from the bottom up, and I'm getting a lot more done that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. You have to do what works for you, which is another idea in the Feldenkrais method. And then we could go back to that word sobriety. Because that's, if you use it properly and you get down to the root or to the real meaning of the word, you're not always talking about alcohol.
Right.
You're talking about a way to live.
Mm-hmm.
Again.
Mm-hmm.
And Feldenkrais was a martial artist,
Mm-hmm.
a black belt in judo.
Mm-hmm.
And he found a way to explain in physical movement and to embody what he was a scientist, so he didn't like the idea of chi. I can explain chi, but I can look at it either way. But
Mm-hmm.
he certainly talked about being able to move in any direction without prior preparation, and that's a physical way to explain choice.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely love that. And I've taught a class or a workshop. I called it The Art of Survival. And it was just that physical, ability to be in a way, either sitting or standing or moving, where you can shift and turn and move in any direction at a moment's notice without having to readjust or to do anything. That to me is freedom.
Yeah.
That to me, and that is the ultimate self-defense.
Yeah, it really is, because somebody could attack you and you kill them, and you're still not free.
Right.
You just killed somebody.
Yeah, right.
That's good. It protected you physically, but you still may not have all the dignity inside that you could have.
Mm-hmm. But if I could just evade the attack,
Mm-hmm.
then I have my dignity, I have my freedom, because no one's going to sue me or try and lock me up or accuse me of anything terrible. And that's something I tell the people that I work with, especially, the women in self-defense. It's like, you can't get hurt if you're not there. It's the basic,
Yeah.
first thing we learn as a brand new martial arts students is how to get out of the way of an attack and how to recognize when something is coming. Again, training your awareness, which anybody can do, that is train your awareness and make it more acute. And then just to remove yourself from the situation, no matter what it is. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a physical attack, because attacks come in every way, shape, and form, physical, mental, emotional, psychological, energetic, just to be able to recognize that and to just remove yourself from the situation to keep yourself safe.
Yeah. So that happens if a situation presents itself right away, but even in a chronic situation of any kind, if you have the opportunity to remove yourself, go ahead. If you don't, you still have the opportunity to respond to it.
Right. I don't know if I'd ever told you this, that I had to break up with my very best and dearest friend in all the world. I mean, we were inseparable. Yeah.
I think that's in your book. Yeah.
Oh, did I? I did include that in the book, didn't I? Yeah. There was a whole lot more to the story, but my editor made me take it out because she said it kind of sounded a little mean girl. Maybe it did, but it was also kind of funny.
So would have sold the book more. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, whatever you do, do it with grace, right?
That's right.
Pretty good. So that's one of the other things that you wanted to talk about. Okay, you're making me laugh here.
Yeah.
I didn't put the part about the broken arm, did I, in the book? I think she made me take that out. Okay, yeah. If you can't remember, then it wasn't in there.
I'm going to review your book again before by the end of the week.
No, this was, well, as I was pulling myself away from that relationship, and it was really hard because, like I said, we were inseparable for years and years. But how do you tell somebody that you've been best and dearest friends with for 30 years that you haven't liked them for the past 15 and have been trying to figure out a way how to break up with them, for the past 10? We can't really say that to somebody. And, at the time when I realized I cannot sustain this friendship any longer, I've just have to terminate it. And I couldn't just approach her and say, look, we're done, just because of her personality and everything. So I just started to gradually pull myself away and, distance myself from that relationship. Another challenge, because we took ballet classes together at least 3 times a week. So I adjusted my dance schedule, went to a different studio, all of these things. Well, and everything was working just fine until she showed up at the dojo. And I had to not only, welcome her to the dojo, but since I was such a high ranking student, I had to help teach her. Oh, it was a nightmare. But I told my youngest sister, got home, and I'm like, you're not going to believe this. She showed up at the dojo. And my sister said, Cheryl, you're going to have to break her arm. And I said, I can't do that. And she said, yes, you can. And you can make it look like an accident. And I'm not sure if she was serious or just kidding. And I said, number one, as a martial artist, I can't do that. I have my, integrity, and I've got my, I can't do that. I said, and just, no, I'm not going to break her arm. Well, she says, you can do it. And I have faith in you. And I just kind of laughed and blew it off. A couple of days later, I got a phone call in the morning. It was my friend. And she says, I can't move my arm. And I says, why not? And she says, I don't know. What's wrong with it? And I said, how would I know? And I says, what happened? And she says, well, I was walking the dog and I slipped on the ice and I fell. And I says, did you fall on your arm? And she said, yes. And now I can't move it. And I said, did you go to the doctor, get an x-ray? And she says, no, I just called you. That's kind of how our relationship had kind of descended into. And I says, you need to go to the doctor. You need to get an x-ray. I can't do anything, And she says, well, do you think it's broken? Again, how would I know? I'm clear across town and I'm not a doctor and I don't have an x-ray machine. So she did go and got an x-ray and she broke her arm. And I'm here to say I was not even within a 10-mile radius. And I was like, she called me and says, my arm is broken. I went, I called my sister after we hung up. I says, you're not going to believe this. She broke her arm. And my sister said, see, I knew you could do it. And I know the whole thing it was just silly. It was just dumb, but it was like, oh my gosh. So I think the point of the story is to be careful what you put out there in the universe.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I never really wished her any harm, but even just, it was like, and she was someone who really didn't have very good awareness. So as she was going out to walk the dog, who was, a dog that tugged, instead of wearing her boots on a snowy, icy day, she wore her tennis shoes. There was absolutely no grip, and the dog went one way and she went down on the cement. So she's lucky she only broke her arm and not her head.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that was just a little fun segue.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you didn't break her arm.
No, I did not break her arm. I would not do that. I did break somebody's nose, but that was an accident. And I also dislocated the same guy's shoulder, but it was a strike that he told me to do. And I says, well, I don't know if I want to do that. And he goes, yeah, you just, drop down this way on my elbow. And I did, and I dislocated his shoulder. But he had a history of a bad shoulder dislocation. And I said, then why did you ask me to do it?
Yeah, once you've done it, it's easier to do it again. So.
Yeah, and you could even, as a PT, you understand, even through the thick gi top, you could see the separation between his shoulder. And, it's like, okay, we're never playing together again if you can't monitor yourself.
Yeah. I know we can all do this. We can all repeat a habit. We all do it. Yeah. But I do marvel sometimes. I've seen people go out and break a bone or do something, and then they'll describe they were working on something else, and you can already tell from the description that they're going to hurt themselves. Mm-hmm. And they hurt themselves again, and then they go out and they do this other thing, and you can already tell from the description.
That's it's funny, but it's just almost confusing and perplexing, because I would see that a lot in ballet class. The same people getting the exact same injuries and the exact same way, and it's like, aren't you seeing a pattern here?
Yeah, I think it comes back to, and I've seen this with other people. Mm-hmm. They live under, and I've done a lot of this in my life, so much. But you live under the system's expectations and other people's expectations and your expectations of yourself. So you're never going to give yourself a break no matter what happens. Mm-hmm. Because you're more afraid of not showing up and meeting even your own expectations than you are of getting hurt.
Boy, that is really brilliantly said.
I don't know, but it's the way it works sometimes.
Yeah. Wow. Now you work with clients one-on-one.
Yeah.
And so when we first spoke and recorded the previous episode, I think you were just getting back into in-person. It was right. A lot of the restrictions were being lifted from the pandemic. You were doing classes online. Are you still doing online, or are you in person now?
What I have now is all in person.
Oh, good for you. Good.
Yeah. And I am not going to be doing classes online for a while. I am building my son's house. And between those two things, that's enough.
I think that's so sweet. What an incredible gift.
Yeah. I've done a lot of framing, a lot of roofing, done siding, and a lot of different things, but I've never actually designed something that fits somebody's budget and put it all together like that. So it's way more complicated than
wow.
than things I've done before, but it's coming together. So hopefully.
Okay, so I do want to highlight for the listeners that you're putting all this together. You're doing all of this physical work, building your son's house. And you say over 70?
I'll be 72 this month.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
But that is another example of being able to do what you want and get what you want out of life when you're paying attention to yourself and being able to have the freedom. Again, we're going back to the F word, another F word, Feldenkrais, freedom. The freedom to be able to do the things that you want to do and to make that choice. I mean, maybe some people wouldn't want to build a house, but there are a lot of other things that you might want to do. And you think at the age of 70 and older that, age limits us, and that's just not true.
Yeah. I think you do have to accept your age and to a certain extent, but it's not, it doesn't stop you from doing anything you want.
Right. Exactly.
Almost anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to do it like you did it when you were 18. Close.
Well, maybe you'll do it smarter than you would have when you were
Oh
18.
yes. Oh yes.
I at least like to think that we've learned some things along the way.
Yeah, I would definitely. You can definitely be a dumb kid at 18.
That's
20,
part of being a dumb
30, even 40.
Yeah, well, that's part of growing up, and some of us take a whole lot longer to grow up than others.
Yes, amen to that.
Mhm. And you also mentioned when we were communicating a little bit earlier about the spirit of a warrior and the true spirit of a warrior. And of course, going back to tying this into, the Feldenkrais method and Moshe and his own personal journey. So how do you see the spirit of a warrior? What does it mean to you?
I should be asking you that.
Oh, well, you could be on Friday.
Yes. So I like action movies,
Hmm.
but action movies don't always incorporate the spirit of a warrior, I don't think.
Mm.
And, I know you know from your experience and a very short history with martial arts, what a shock it is to be hit.
Hmm.
And I think that the spirit of a warrior is as much or way more about being able to be hit as to deliver a hit.
Hmm.
And I remember George Foreman regained the heavyweight world championship title at age 47, I think. But he'd been through some fights. His face looked like a squished watermelon at the end of some of them.
Oh, God.
And I remember him being interviewed, and somebody said, "Do you ever cry? During or after a fight?" He goes, "I feel like crying." He is a tough guy. So you have to take almost more punches than you ever gave out to ever learn anything. So the spirit of a warrior, I think, is more about resilience and humility, and the double-edged sword of being nothing in something, which Feldenkrais also talked about. You're a speck in the universe, but you're the most important one in the world to yourself, and maybe even and you have to be able to respect that unique thing that you have. Sometimes, in order to do things well, I think you have to lay aside perfection and just say, there's something inside of me that's unique, so I'm just going to go with that.
And you fall on your face more times than you care to admit.
So
but you learn so much when you do.
You do. And that's the discomfort of learning anything new. You're going to do it wrong.
I think that's why a lot of people are hesitant to try new things, because you can't just walk into a new activity, a new sport, or a new movement, or whatever it is that you're doing, without taking some hits and without falling on your face. I mean, again, it's all part of the process, and that could be really intimidating to people, and not wanting to go out of their comfort zone because they don't want to look foolish, or look silly, or feel stupid, feel that they can't accomplish something. But that's the whole point of trying.
Yeah, I think the spirit of a warrior is just that. It's understanding the risks and the rewards.
Exactly.
One of the more painful things, I think, is say you have a job, and that job, because it's a big corporation, so they have a big system, and every year you have to go in and shut the door with your boss and be evaluated. And it's as much as you think you're centered within yourself. For me, that's a difficult experience, and that tests your humility, your inner confidence, your ability to take yourself and your environment a little bit lightly.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the tough things. That's the spirit of a warrior. Some people, not only all of us experience discomfort in a new situation.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of us, I think, and we should.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But in fact, it's dangerous not to.
Mm-hmm.
But some people are completely paralyzed by it and will never attempt something because they have too high an estimation of themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they're too afraid of letting go of this high estimation that they have of themselves and trying something, and will be completely paralyzed. I've seen that. And will never try anything new.
Mm-hmm. The self-image and the belief system gets in the way.
Yeah. So if we think too highly of ourselves, we can never attain the warrior spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But if not, we can soberly walk through the risks.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know,
and avoid them if necessary. I mean,
well, yeah, that is the true spirit of a warrior is avoiding the dangers. I mean, taking risks is okay, but recognizing the dangers, but
recognizing when you should step aside instead of just, take the hit.
Exactly. And, I always say that life is full of hits again, and to me, the true spirit of a warrior is just, like you said, it's resilience and it's never giving up.
Yeah.
You fall down 7 times, you get up 8, just keep going. And I always talk to, other people like, I have a friend who beat cancer, and, I used to call her, a cancer warrior, and so warriors come in all different shapes and sizes, just like hits do, because life is full of hits. And just being able to maneuver your way through life, to be able to take the hits without getting completely demolished or annihilated, or to be able to see them coming and to be able to step aside so you can protect yourself. So it really is a life skill. And to me, that is something that I learned through Feldenkrais just as much as I did in the martial arts. And as you know from the book, my martial arts training and my Feldenkrais training kind of just came together at the same time, which was really interesting and absolutely exhausting at the same time. But it truly is the art of survival and the art of self-defense. And I'm talking about Feldenkrais.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I would go through my trainings and every night I would go home and just try to absorb some of that. And it was like, how does this integrate into my life? And it was pretty cool in the end. But that's another one of those things where it was said during training and proved to be true, is that you don't really understand what you're doing for several years after you finish it.
Right. And even now I'll have like these either aha moments or something will just pop up and it's like, oh, that's so Feldenkrais. And even, for example, like the stupid spreadsheet and then the list of all of those websites and all the things I was supposed to look up, just flipping it and turning it and going from the bottom up made just a huge difference. So sometimes you don't have to make a huge change to make a huge impact on the outcome.
Yeah, that's right. Just the smallest changes.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to make a huge change, that can be dangerous and off track.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you won't be quite as willing to try another change later on. If you've had, So talking about big changes, okay, because you've already written one book, The Aware Athlete, and you are working on your second book, and it is getting pretty close to being finished, or?
I think so, yeah.
And what does your editor think?
Well, I'm trying to communicate with her, but she's it's been rewritten a number of times. Actually, a rewrite of something I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's over and over and over. They say writing is rewriting.
Okay, and the title of it is Mysterious Destiny, Mission to Morrows. So that is completely different from the type of book that you first wrote, because your first book is The Aware Athlete.
But it's also the same.
Really? Oh, do tell.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So it's kind of an alternate timeline, alternate reality kind of setting, so that I don't have to make everything exactly the way it is right now. And but it's a story on the surface of 20 astronauts that go to explore an unknown yet habitable planet. And then when they get there, of course, they find that their mission is a little more complicated than they thought. So I don't want to tell you all the details in the book, because then you won't need to read it.
Oh, I can't wait to read it.
But it's also, it certainly also is about the fact that these astronauts, this team, has to learn the true meaning of power and wisdom in order to survive and actually also make an impact on their world.
So it sounds like it's Feldenkrais based.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it has a story. And,
So it's obviously fiction, and your first book was nonfiction. So
correct.
the experience of writing a fiction book after writing a nonfiction, I mean, what's it like? I wouldn't even know where to begin.
I really didn't know how to write fiction. It just flowed out, but it wasn't. But you have to present the story in a certain way for it to be readable. So that's where there was a lot of. If you read my first book, there was a number of examples of poetry in there. I don't know much about poetry, but it was just the easiest way to say some things. And even there was even a narrative about the beginning of the world and so on. And at the beginning of the book. And so it's not that big a divergence to, try to be a little creative with the story.
So I'm just curious, do you think there'll be a third book, a third or a fourth?
I think so, yeah.
Now, 10 years ago, okay, so let me see, what year is it now? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, 10 years ago, would you ever expect to be an author? I mean, was it ever on your radar, or how did it come about?
I did receive some encouragement from one class in college, but absolutely not.
Okay.
I really didn't grow up thinking I was going to be able to write anything, and couldn't have done it as a kid because I didn't know the procedure, just like we talked about, finishing concrete earlier. So I didn't have that knowledge, and I didn't have much life experience, and I didn't have much inclination to do that. But I do remember it kind of opened my world up as a kid when I was old enough to walk far enough away from the house to go to the local library and begin reading the science fiction sections.
Oh, okay.
So I did enjoy that very much, but no, never would have more considered myself to be someone who paints and draws, which I still like to do, but I haven't had time for that lately.
Well, it seems like you've had a lot on your plate.
Yeah. Yeah, so no, I wouldn't have. The only book I had written prior to 10 years ago was my wife and I had this little upholstery business for a while. And so we also thought, well, why don't we just also teach that at the local community college? We would teach it in our shop. It would be one of their adult classes. And so I thought, well, I could make a little bit of extra money by writing a manual. So we wrote a little upholstery book, and yeah.
Well, there you go.
But no, the answer to that is really no. I never thought of myself as an author. And now it's something I'll probably continue with.
Isn't it funny? It's almost like once you've written one, a lot of people continue to write.
That's true.
I mean,
That's
it's
true.
almost like an addiction, but a good
yeah, it's
one.
kind of like if you get away with it once, why not try it again?
If it hasn't driven you crazy too the first time, maybe let's try it again. I tell people sometimes it's like, now I understand why so many famous authors lost their minds or went crazy or whatever.
Yeah.
Because when things aren't going well, they don't go well.
That's true. It's work.
Yeah,
Just work.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But it's definitely a labor of love.
It is. It's just like learning to do anything else.
Yeah. So, Scott, is there any little pearls of wisdom you would like to leave with the audience before we sign off? So much to say.
Yeah, do what works for you. Get out there and get what you want, and find a way to do it that works for you.
And get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I have all of your links are with the show notes and stuff, but can you just give people some of the places where they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can go to Amazon for the Aware Athlete book.
Mm-hmm.
And soon, I hope, not sure exactly when, because we
Mhm.
have a little bit more work to do.
Mhm.
But for The Serious Destiny, you can also go to Amazon.
Mhm.
The first book is also on Barnes and Noble and so on,
Mhm.
but primarily on Amazon. And then to contact me, you could go to awareathlete.com, or on Facebook, you could go to the Aware Athlete Mind Body Training Group.
Nice.
Yeah.
All righty. So, Scott, thank you so much for being here. I always love talking to you. You're so much fun to talk to, and we kind of speak the same language.
Yeah, I think we have a lot in common. So thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And I would love to have you back on the show once the book is out, and
Okay.
once the house is not necessarily completely finished, but at least by the time it's, your son is able to move in. I would like to know how all that's going. You can kind of share some of your stories with us then as well.
Okay. Yeah. Glad to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
again. Oh, no, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And everybody, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you too. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, just get out of that comfort zone, but make yourself comfortable as you do. And don't forget, you really need to, when you know what you're doing, you can do what you want. And that is the way of the FemiNinja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.